One of the first nodes that I recommend anyone new to n8n learns is going to be the edit fields, also known as the set node. Ideally, what this allows you to do is to modify, add, or remove item fields. This could be anything from converting data types, right? Like you're converting string into an array, or a number into a string, or a string into a number, to adding brand new item fields, to even changing the name of an item field. In fact, there's so many different things that you could do with this. We're going to be covering anywhere from like 15 to 20 different examples. You're going to be expert in this node after this video, and you're going to see a ton of different use cases which you can add on into your future workflows. Real quick though, before I jump into this video, if you guys need any help with any data needs or any n8n or AI automations, I am taking on freelance customers. You can find my contact information down below in the description. So with this out of the way, let's learn everything you need to know about the edit set field node. All right, here in n8n now. So why you want to use edit set? Well, a few things. Number one, you can add, change, or remove fields. And because of that, it makes your data more consistent and cleaner in your workflow, right? And while like some basic examples like may seem stupid, like why are we just removing one thing or adding a few things? Like you got to remember, when you work with APIs and you work with a lot of other data sets, sometimes you might have a lot of stuff coming in, right? Sometimes when I work with Appify, there's a lot of data that goes through. And if you're not familiar with Appify, right, that's a great way to scrape social media, but you might have like 200 different data points. And in reality, like you're not going to store all 200 data points. Like a customer doesn't care about all 200. So you want to clean it up. That's where when you use something like edit fields or edit set fields, it could really help. Now, while you're in here, right, the nodes that we're going to be using today, first is going to be this manual trigger. We're just going to attach it all across this video. You can just find it over here. Now, I can't set up multiple manual triggers, so I'll just be dragging and dropping this. What you guys care about though for this video is the edit set. So you can go over here and when you type in edit, typically the second one, it says edit fields set, right? Modify, add, or remove item fields. So with that out of the way, I'm going to be teaching you guys a lot of examples. Like you can just see, like there is going to be a ton here in this video, right? And the reason for that is my goal is to be super comprehensive with the nodes that we cover, right? Obviously, this is a beginner node, and I think you guys can master it pretty quickly, but there's a lot of things that you can do with it. So I want to show you guys that. And what we're going to do is start with our first example. Now, our first example we're going to be taking a look at is creating or adding in data. So all I'm doing is going to the edit fields over here, right? I have nothing in this trigger, by the way, just to show you, like nothing over here, no mock data. And what we're going to do is we're going to generate a few fields, right? So what I'm going to do over here is set a name, and I'm going to set the data type. Now, there's a lot of different data types you can specifically set in over here with manual mapping, right? You can go over here, you can see you can set a string, you can set a number, a Boolean, array, object, or binary data. So what we're going to do is just use a few of these on this side of things. So my name is Ryan. Let's say this is miles ran. I don't know, I ran about 50 miles this week. So we have that over here, and then ultra runner. Well, I like running ultra marathons. So I set the Boolean over here to true, right? And just to talk about the data type of Boolean, right? That's going to be either something that is true or false. I do plan on making a video just covering all the different types of data types here in n8n, because I think that would be a good introductory video for you guys. So be aware that is going to be on the horizon. It'll probably be a little bit earlier in our n8n playlist than this video. Not 100% sure, but regardless, right? When I execute step, now you can see that we've created one item over here, right? It has my name, miles ran this week, right? And then the attribute that I am an ultra runner, right? We have just generated this data, which is really awesome. Cool. So now let's take a look at our next example, which is renaming data. Now, again, world scenario, sometimes you'll scrape something, sometimes you'll use an API. You have data that comes in and you just don't like the naming convention, right? Whether you're delivering this to someone and they say, hey, I don't want this name, I want it changed differently, or there's just a lot of things coming in, it might be confusing. You want to rename your data, right? Again, this happens all the time in the real world scenario. My full-time job is a data scientist. I'm constantly renaming columns in spreadsheets, right? It happens. So what we're going to do over here is have our input that we have on this side of things, right? So remember how we had the name, miles ran, ultra runner, right? Same thing over here. So nothing has changed, but what we're going to do on our next edit fields is rename. So let's say, for example, I want to rename ultra runner to just runner, right? So what I'm going to do now is, again, make sure manual mapping is selected, right? This is the new name that you want to select, right? We're going to make sure the data type matches, right? And you're going to drag and drop this over here, right? And you'll notice it goes from fixed into an expression. And what it does is it creates a JSON over here, right? This is what JSON is. On this side of things, we'll be covering a little bit more about JSON with edit set a little bit later in the video, but you when you drag this in, you'll get that, right? If you go above or the node over here, right? We didn't have to put JSON, right? These are all fixed in place. But when you drag and drop something into over here, and this is just in general an n8n, right? You'll see it creates this JSON. So essentially what we're doing is we're taking this ultra runner, right? We're going to rename it into runner, right? We execute this step over here. Now we just have the output being runner. But the problem is now we don't have name and miles ran. So this goes into our next example, right? How do we include these other input items? Like, again, over here, this is nice that we renamed runner, like ultra runner into runner, but like, what happened to name? What happened to miles ran? Like, I still wanted that data. So let me show you how we could solve that. So there's a few different options on here, right? And again, we're going to keep the same stuff over here, right? Name, miles ran, runner. We're going to also just keep this renaming. And again, if I just execute the step, right? What you can see over here, and actually, sorry, I went a step ahead when I started solving this for the video. We have the runner here, right? So there's a few different options that we could use to save this, right? So if you go down below, right, the first, technically before you even go down over here, right, you could just drag and drop everything. So I renamed this into runner, right? Then let's say we have miles ran, and then we have our name over here, right? So first, we have that. One thing to note is this order is different, right? We have name, miles ran, ultra runner. Now we have runner, miles ran, name. So you can just move these around if you want. So like, okay, let's match these up. Let's go here. Name was first, right? Miles ran was second, then runner. Execute this step. I don't know why it's taking a little longer, but you can see that this matches 1-to-1. What if I want to have runner before miles ran, right? I can switch these. So that's our first option, right? Like if you don't have a lot of fields over here and you just want them to be over here, like it, in my opinion, just easy just to drag and drop those over there. It's not always the most efficient though. Like imagine you have, 10 or 20 things that you want to set, right? Like, does it make sense to drag in all of these over here? Maybe if you're going to rename a lot of them, but it's not always practical, right? So let me just delete these over here. And what we're going to do now is show you two other options, or technically a little bit more. So there's this down over here called include other input fields, right? And it says whether to pass the output all input fields along with the fields in a field to set. So what you can do is click on that and you have a few different options. So when I click over here and I execute this step, right? You can see now that name over here is first, right? Miles ran, ultra runner. And then this technically generated a brand new field called runner, right? So then you have two other options. So the first one is all except. So essentially, like we've already renamed ultra runner. So what you should probably do is just put ultra runner over here. I execute the step and you can see it's been renamed, right? So if you do rename something, make sure to put that in the fields to exclude. If you want to have everything in over here, right? Rename the field up over here, do all except, and then put in that field over here. In addition, you have the selected. So like, imagine you want to have this runner over here and you just want the name. Like you don't care about the miles ran. So just put the field that you want to include. And this is helpful if you have like 100 different things over here and you just want to have like 3 or 4, right? Like, okay, we can just put this over here and you can see we have name and runner. So a few different options, right? You can put all these in the fields to set. You can go down over here, choose all selected or all except, just depending on your scenario, right? And you have to just click over here, include other input on that side of things. Okay. So that is that example over here. Another thing that's commonly used with edit set is converting data, right? And I typically see this happen when people read in spreadsheets. Someone might want to convert, text into an array. I'll show you some basic examples here, right? We're going to go into string and string to int. So what I have over here, right, is a zip code, and then I have a bib number. So like, okay, where is a runner based out of? And again, I just put in a random zip code. What is the bib number? Again, a super random bib number. No one's getting single digits unless you're an elite athlete. And you can see that zip code is a number over here, and bib number is a string, right? So let's change these up. And what I want to do now is make this zip code right into a string. You can see this is a number right now. Again, I just dragged and dropped this over here. And bib number, let's make this into a number, right? And you can see because it has double quotes, right? We know that this is going to be a string, right? Whereas zip code doesn't have double quotes, and that's why we know that is a number. So we're just going to flip both of these over here. And then you can see like, yay, these have flipped, right? Zip code is now string, whereas bib number is now a number. Awesome. So converting data types does happen with an edit set. Probably the most popular is using a spreadsheet and working with arrays, but I know it is possible with strings and integers too. Strings or numbers, I should say. Not always the case, it's an integer. All right, so now let's talk about like accessing an element in an array. So we have an array over here of different races like Western States, UTMB, Hard Rock 100, Leadville, and then Badwater, right? So this is an array. We have these brackets here on the outside, and inside over here, we have different strings, okay? So, I want to access these elements. How do I do that? So what you can do on this side of things is access a specific one, right? So what you'll notice is I actually put the number 0 over here, and, by default, you can just drag and drop like, oh, I want this over here, right? And it'll automatically populate this number, but I want to teach you the theory behind it as well, so that way you can understand like what is actually going on in this instance. So in programming languages, right, it is very common to start at 0, like it's position 0. So Western States, right, we see this populate over here. Well, it's in position 0, right? So it goes 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So the last element in an array is the length minus 1. Right? So Badwater, if I wanted to see Badwater, right? I don't even have to do anything else. I could just put 4 over here, and you'll see Badwater populates, right? And again, you can just drag and drop things. And for most of you guys, you're not going to care. You're going to say, hey, you know what? This works. It doesn't matter to me. Like, I don't want to know the theory behind it. But at the end of the day, I think it's going to improve your skills if you just learn a little bit of the basic theory and things like that. Right? Just remember an array is going to start at position 0 if you're going to work on this, right? And we can access an array like this with the brackets and then put in that specific number. Now I have a few different Python videos talking about arrays. Again, it's outside the scope here of n8n, and I may make a video just talking about the array data type in general, but really just like, if you learn the basics of programming, you don't even have to be a great programmer. It can really improve your n8n skills. And I highly recommend you spend a few days and study it, right? I think a lot of people jump into n8n. They have no coding background. Again, nothing wrong with that, but you just don't pick up the smaller details, right? And I think that's where sometimes these workflows fail and things like that. So, just learn a little bit of the basics behind coding. It's going to take you far. All right. So next, what we're going to do is take a look at an object. So we have a little bit of complicated object over here. So we have a runner, Courtney Dolewater, right? Like nickname, favorite race, notable wins, miles per week, gear, different things like that, right? So all this is populated over here on a larger object, right? The object is a little bit more of a complicated data type. You can see a lot of stuff is going on over here, right? And again, like you can grab multiple things from the object. What I'd recommend in this instance is just like drag and drop, right? We can access all of these manually, but like, because it's more complicated than array, just drag and drop these over here, right? And you can see like, object even has arrays in it, right? You have notable wins. That's an array on this side of things, right? We have key value pairs between shoes, right? And watch. Like, again, this is a lot more complicated than an array. So I would just recommend drag and drop, and you can see like we've cut this down, right? Like instead of all notable wins, I just put one notable win, right? And again, you can change the order. You can do whatever you want in this side of things, right? But that is going to be one example over there. All right. So that is your object on this side of things. And now what I want to show you is a spreadsheet. Now spreadsheet with edit set after is very, very popular. So let me show you how we could do this with Google Sheets. So what I have over here is a Google Sheet on this side of things. I had a document that I created called Split Out Node just for that video, and I've been using it for a few other videos on here, the channel, because I don't want to rename it. But yeah, Split Out Node, what we have over here is different bands, songs, genre, and then also if I've seen them live or not. All right, nothing really too complicated with here in Google Sheets, right? We're connecting a Google Sheets account, which if you don't know how to do that, I have a full video covering that step by step, right? I want to get rows. What document am I grabbing from? What sheet tab am I grabbing from, right? No filtering. We're just grabbing the entire document, okay? Then what we're doing in edit set is we're grabbing, okay, let's grab the band. So I have a band over here, 9-inch Nails. Right? There's others over there, but I just put band, right? This is a string. Again, you can do any casting if you want and just drag and drop, right? And you can see it's the JSON.band. But here's the interesting part. Like when you read in an array with a spreadsheet of any sorts, right? It's going to think that that is going to be a string by default. So like, for example, this array has multiple songs in it. Like I want to access it. So what you need to do is actually convert this into an array, which is why I showed you the data type conversion a little bit earlier. Right. So and by default, this will populate a string, just change this over here to array. And I expect the same thing to happen with like true or false, right? By default, it'll probably set that as a string. You'll want to go over here and make that a Boolean if that's the case. But you can see all across the board, we have that. And looking back, I probably should have done that for the scene live, but this wasn't expected to be used for the edit set video. All right. Now here's another one on this side of things. So this is just an internal data table. So what I have over here is like Instagram followers. So you can see like we have Kipchoge and Walmsley. Again, I use this for the data tables video. And then you can see over here, here's an example, like again, just drag and drop. So what I have is the username, drag and drop the username over here, right? And I want to get the followers, right? And drag and drop the followers on here. And what's interesting is in this instance, right? When I created that data table, it looks like I accidentally casted this as a string when it shouldn't be, but no worries, we can fix that. So just drag and drop the followers over here, right? Make this as a number, and you can see now it's a number, right? Looks like string over here, now it's a number, and we are good to go. So again, just to show you like there's scenarios where that happens. Okay. Now let's talk about a little bit of the JSON and things like that. Now this isn't going to be a full video covering JSON. I probably will make that here in the future. And what I want to do is just show you some common stuff involved with it. So like there's a lot of JSON, and again, I'm not going to cover it. Actually, this is working. I don't know why I put not working. That was just a demo when I was building this through. But yeah, let's jump into the first one. So what we're going to do is combine fields together in this example, right? So what we have over here is we have a first name and then a last name. So we have a famous athlete, which is Jim Thorpe, right? First name and last name over here. And you can see we have those there, first name and last name. And then what we want to do is combine these together, right? And there's a few different ways that you could combine things together, right? I think of this kind of as like a print statement here in Python. Again, I know Python isn't as popular as JavaScript with an n8n, but that's kind of my background, right? So I drop in the first name over here. I do plus, I add in a space over here. I do plus, I drag in the last name over here. And just like that, right? We have created something called full name. I've created something full name, right? This is obviously a string. And then now I have both of these over here. Again, make sure you're an expression, right? And you can drag and drop multiple of these over here. You're just gonna have to format this a little bit, right? So just that plus over here. Now there's also or, and there's a few different ways that you could do or. I'm just going to show you one approach to it. Again, a little bit outside the scope of the video. But we have over here, again, first and last name. Let's imagine we would just want to have something that says name. And, not always is everything going to be populated, right? Again, when you're working with rural data, there's always going to be issues. Well, not always, but a good chance that there's going to be issues with your data set. A lot of people outside of like a data scientist or a data analyst or a data engineer, they just don't care if data is clean, which is unfortunate. But it's your job to provide clean data, even if your coworkers do not care about clean data. Now, the coworkers I work with, they definitely want clean data and they care about the quality of the data, but that's not always the case at every company that you work at, right? So we have first name and last name. Let's imagine we just want name, and let's grab one of these over here. Like one of these could be blank, one of them might, right? So just put double pipes over here, right? And this is or, so it'll grab the first name or the last name, and you can see it grabs Jim. Like Jim is present. We are good to go on that side of things. Okay. So I want to show you guys some string methods really quick. Again, like there's a ton of string methods, right? And these are just some of these that I populated over here, right? The extracting, checker, find text, trimming. There's changing case. Like there's just so many of them, again, outside the scope of the video. So let's just walk through a few of these, right? So what I have over here is football, string, Jim Thorpe, right? So we have that over there. Jim Thorpe obviously was an Olympic athlete as well. What I put over here is I just dragged and drop this over here, JSON.football, and then I put two uppercase, right? And you see we Jim Thorpe, which is just the normal capitalization case, now is all capital like that, right? Then we go over to this example, right? And I don't even remember what example I used over here. This was a while ago since I built this video. Again, we'll have Jim Thorpe over here. And then what I want to do is just split this. And this is going to turn this over here into an array on this side of things. So, this doesn't look like an array because you need to actually go over here and convert this into an array. So if we go like this now, we've completely changed the data type. We have an array over here. We have Jim and then Thorpe, just because that's what split does, right? And you can even see as like a small hint, it shows you what that output is going to be, which is pretty nice. Okay. So, by using a string method like that, we can actually convert the data type as well, as long as you go over here and change that data type, right? So that's a split example. Let's talk about chaining things together. So you can actually chain together multiple things, right? So again, we're going to bring in Jim Thorpe on this side of things. So we have Jim Thorpe, and then what we're going to do on here is do a substring, right? So we're going to grab part of it, and then we're going to make it capital. And again, I put some of the common ones over here. This isn't everything. And I promise you at some point I'll have a full video, but then you just go over here, right? And you can see Thorpe all capitalized. So we're pretty good on that side of things. All right. Another one over here is formatting a phone number. Really, really popular, right? And just to show you this really quick, we have a phone number, the classic 123 all the way through 0 here at the very end. And then what I'm going to do on this side of thing is format it. So what we're going to do is a two string. We're going to slice this 0 to 3. We're going to do plus. I showed you a little bit earlier. We can use this as a space, but we can also put in a character. And I'm going to just put a dash plus, same exact thing, slice it, dash, same exact thing. And again, this is probably the most complicated example I just want to show you guys today. But we just formatted, right, this integer over here into a string for a phone number, which is amazing, all right? And this is just like 3 lines of code, right? You could technically put that plus over here. But yeah, I just think it's a little bit easier to read this here in the video on that side of things. Additionally, what I just want to show you guys as well is like, if you find you're running out of space over here, you can just click over here and get this like full screen like this. And this is what I was talking about with the 3 lines of code, right? So like you can see this in a little bit of a different view. If you do that, probably should have showed you guys that a little bit earlier, right? But you can just expand that one out. Cool. All right. So every example I've showed you guys so far uses this mode called manual mapping. But if you notice, there's a second one called JSON, and it's a little bit more complicated, right? But let me just show you a few different examples on this side of things. So we're going to do in the JSON, we're going to create a runner, Courtney Dolewater. We're going to put favorite race, UTMB, right? And check it out. We have created the JSON. Pretty easy, right? Key value pairs, name. Okay, this is the name associated with it. Favorite race, this is the race associated with it, right? And these are both going to be strings. We can also create like an integer or a number over here. So let's just say like miles. And technically, I think UTMB is not 100 miles. I think it's a little different, but I'm just going to put 100 over here. And when you're working with numbers, right, you necessarily don't have to put these in double quotes. So I'll execute this step and you can see miles is over here as 100, right? If I put this as quotes, then it would turn into a string. This is a number, right? So I just wanted to quickly show you, like, we can create that. Again, you can create this without JSON as well. And I did that in manual mapping, right? You would just have to create runner name and favorite race. This can be a little bit faster. Personally, like, I find it faster just to do manual mapping. Unless it's kind of complicated, like an object or an array. I typically go with manual mapping over JSON. Or like if you want to generate something really fast with an LLM and ask it to create JSON for you, again, a way that you could populate it over there. Okay, so I want to show you mixed types. I kind of already went ahead of that, but here's another example, right? Western states 100, miles is 100, right? This is a Boolean over here. This is a number as well. This is going to be our float. This is our integer, right? And you can see these are all different across the board, just different data types across on that side of things, right? Here's an array, which again, I think JSON is probably the better approach for an array because it can be kind of complicated to read these in. So you can see, like, we just put ultra races over here. We have the brackets and then we populate the different races over here. Whereas like when we went over here, and I'll just show you this really fast. Where's our array example? Accessing elements in an array. Like you can see, like the array is kind of hard to read over here unless you like make it this over here, like then it's easy. So like with something with an array, I could see either using like manual mapping or JSON on that. Like it's not super readable here. Whereas when you go down over here, right? And again, it's all personal opinion at the end of the day, right? They both do the job. Like this is more readable. Whatever works for you. And then lastly, let's talk about object, right? So here's object. And again, I just find objects are a little bit more readable in JSON than it is on manual mapping, unless you expand this out. And here's just a basic object, right? So yeah, that is essentially it on that side of things. You know, I don't think Jim Thorpe ever ran 100 mile or 50K, but I would have been curious to see what his time would be. So just let me recap everything that we've covered today, because like we covered a lot, right? And you probably thought like, hey, this edit fields is like a 5-minute video. You know, I thought it was gonna be a shorter video when I started planning, but there's really a lot that you could do on this side of things. I necessarily didn't think it was gonna be 5 minutes, but you know, what we can do is create new fields and new data. I showed you how to do that, right? You can rename fields. Again, just do that. You can select what fields you would like to keep as well, right? Very, very basic. You can do conversion, right? Int to string is common, string to int, right? String to array. You can access elements of an array. You can access parts of an object, right? You can grab a spreadsheet, quickly select only the specific parts of the spreadsheet you need, right? The spreadsheets sometimes have hundreds of columns, so you can select which ones that you specifically want, and you can do casting based off of incorrect data types within a spreadsheet, right? Showed you 2 examples on that side of things, right? When you jump into coding, right, you have a lot more capabilities, right? I showed you some of the different methods over here. I showed you how to combine things together, right? An or statement. Showed you how to chain together multiple things, right? Like we extracted text and we made it capitalized. We can do it all in one line of code, right? Showed you how we can format a phone number within over here. And then lastly, we talked about JSON mode versus manual mapping. So if you're more familiar with JSON or just way quicker with it, use JSON. Again, I'd probably recommend that for array or nested objects over the manual mapping on that side of things, just because of the readability. But you know, choose whatever path you want. At the end of the day, there's multiple ways to get the solution to things in n8n, and the same is with development in general and coding, right? A lot of different solutions out there. You know, whatever works best, whatever you're happiest with, do that to get the job done. Guys, that is going to be the edit set node. Remember, just go over here, edit, and look for the one that says edit fields, set, modify, add, or remove fields. I hope you guys learned something new in this video. If you did, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Listen, if you're here, you're new to n8n and you're trying to learn, I have well over 30 videos here on YouTube in a playlist covering n8n topics. My goal is to make the best n8n playlist here on YouTube, teach you everything that you need to get going to start with your automations, right? 100% free content. So check out that playlist. It's going to be on the screen right now. Thanks again for watching, and I'll catch you guys in another video.